We're going to deal with ethics of the father. Now, just before we even start, ethics of the father is a mishnayot, like we just discussed. But usually Mishnah is laws. Ethics of the father is not laws. It's not laws. It's things that have nothing to do with Jewish law. It's not things you have to do. Things that are ethics, that it's recommended, it's a good way of life. Think about it this way. Okay? Since I think we're probably going to have a couple of classes on ethics of the father, just have it in mind throughout the classes because it's going to come up again and again. It's not going to come up today, but it is going to come up. Ethics of the father, there's a custom to say it during the summer month. So during the summer month, from Pesach to Rosh Hashanah, we say ethics of the father. Some people say it less than that, but during the summer month, since the day is longer, we want to increase in Torah, so we learn ethics of the father, because the day is becoming longer now as it goes through. Okay, so let's start. Mishnah number 1. Moshe kibel Torah meSinai. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. Mesara leYoshua. He passed it on to Yoshua. Yoshua lezkenim. Joshua to the elders. Zkenim leNevi'im. The elders to the prophets. uNevi'im masru al anshe knesset haGdolah. And the prophets passed it on to the men of the great assembly. So over here, you have almost 1,000 years, by the way. They don't enumerate all the generations. The men of the great assembly is the beginning of the second temple, right? All the way from Moshe. So all the way from Moshe to the beginning of the second temple. Yeah. Hem amru shlosha dvarim. So the men of the great assembly, they said 3 things. What are the three things that the men of the great assembly said? Just Jewish history, just a little bit. Most people were exiled to Babylon. You know, after the first destruction, people were exiled to Babylon. But the life in Babylon was excellent for the Jews. They came to Babylon. The Babylonians didn't know how to do all kinds of foilish shtick. The Jews came over there and they took over pretty much. Yeah, it was not only easy, they were very powerful everywhere, within the government, within industries. They really took over. To the extent that the time that the second temple was built, when I say not only the majority of Jews stayed in Babylon throughout the second temple, it's not just the majority, it was the powerful ones stayed. If anybody came back, it was, not important one. All the power stayed in Babylon. Yeah, in the yeshivas in Babylon. That's all the things. So when the men of the great assembly, usually until that time, the Sanhedrin only had 70 sages. So the men of the great assembly, it became to be 120. This is where the Knesset took 120. Yeah. So so why did they do it? Because there was a division in Israel between the sages and the regular folks. There were a few sages who came back, tzaddikim, but all the regular folks who came back were the guys who couldn't make it in Babylon. So you can imagine, if you couldn't make it in Babylon, those are the guys who were, so they were ignoramus, they didn't know how to read, they didn't know how to write, they were simple people, and they were completely separated from the sages. There was a complete division between them. To such an extent, they didn't trust them. It was a different life. They couldn't associate with them. So the men of the great assembly, that was their job. Their job was to start going back to the nation. Start making a connection between them and the nation. So we're going to see that the decrees that they did, this is how they did. Number 1, Hevu metunim badin. The first thing that they did, it says, when you give judgment, do it slowly. What does it mean? Hevu metunim badin, it's a law from the Torah. And we already stated, Pirkei Avot are not laws. This is ethics. So it says, what does it mean? Usually, how would the cases happen? You would come, the two litigants would come, they will say the case, and immediately the Rebbe says, this is another thing that most people don't know. cases by the rabbis, if you want to be a rabbi, there's 30 questions people ask you. Yeah? Once in a while, you're going to be asked another question. Once every 5 years. But 30 questions are going to be asked constantly. And once in a while, you're going to ask a different question. So most of the time, when a case came to the sages, they heard this case, the same case, a million times before. So the litigant would say something, he would say something, they would say, you owe him that, and they would send them. And what happened? The regular guys that used to come in, they said, they didn't even listen to me. They think that, they stopped coming. They didn't even listen. The guy said, of course the rabbi knows. He says, no, you cannot do this. When the litigants come, you take your time. You tell them, we have to think about it. And you don't say the judgment in the same day. He says, it's a very complicated case. We'll have to discuss it. And that's why are they doing it? Because the guys don't trust them anymore. They say, we come, we say, they don't even listen to us. Oh, that's nothing. Second things that they're going to do, ha'amidu talmidim arbe. It says, we cannot continue this way with the Jewish people. There's not enough guys who know how to read and write. We need to have more education. People need to know how to read and write. This is what it means. Put a lot of students. And one more thing that they know, because the regular people did not know the law, because they were not amongst the sages throughout much, there were many things that they transgressed, many transgressions that they transgressed. So the sages says we're going to have to put fences for them so they won't transgress in all those things. So you see what the men of the great assemblies are doing, they're trying to fix the time, the period of the time that they lived in. Okay. The Bartanura explains what we just read. Moshe kibel Torah מסיני, Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. אומר אני, I say, לפי שמסכת זו אינה מיוסדת על פירוש מצווה ממצוות תורה כשאר מסכתות שבמשנה. Just like I told you before, this has got nothing to do with Jewish laws. So they're going to tell you it's ethics. Oh, maybe it's ethics that the sages came up on their own. It's ethics. אלא כולם מוסרים ומידות וחכמי אומות העולם גם כן חיברו ספרים כמו שבדו מליבם בדרגי המוסר. כיצד יתנהג עדיין חברו? It says it's just like ethics, like Aristotle, like all these great guys, they have ethics also. So it says maybe ethics of the father is the same manner. People, wise ideas, the Jewish people have come throughout the ages. לפיכך התחיל התנא במסכת זו, משה קיבל תורה מסיני. So the Tana says, don't make that mistake. Those ethics, even though it's said by the sages, they're not ethics that they came out from their own. All these ethics came from God. And we received it on Mount Sinai. לומר לך, to tell you, שהמידות והמוסרים שבזו המסכתא לא בדו אותם חכמי המשנה מליבם. It wasn't invented by their own heads, just like all the other ethics in the world. אלא אף אלו נאמרו בסיני. But they were also told to us in Sinai. Sinai, from Sinai. So it's actually strange. If you look at the beginning, it says Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. Moshe didn't receive the Torah from Sinai. Moshe received the Torah from God. So the Mishnah immediately asks, why does it say Torah received the Moshe from Sinai? It should say Moshe received the Torah from God, not from Sinai. Sinai is a mountain. Mountains don't give Torah. Sinai. So Rashi says, Bartanura says, Mimi shenigla beSinai. It's not the mountain, obviously. It's the one who was revealed on Sinai, which is God. And then he says, he gave it to whom? Lizkenim, to the elders. שהאריכו ימים אחרי יהושע, that they lived long life after Yehoshua. ואותם הזקנים לזקנים אחרים, and those elders gave it to other elders. עד שהגיע לתחילתם של נביאים, until the first prophets, שהם אלי הכהן ושמואל הרמתי. Shmuel, yeah, famous prophet, until it received to that time. Page number 5, all the way לאנשי כנסת הגדולה, to the men of the great assembly. 120 זקנים היו, there were 120. Some of the famous ones were Zerubbabel, Sariah, Re'elia. The famous one that everybody knows was Mordechai. After the Purim, Mordechai came back. He was one of the 120. Mordechai Bilshan. Mordechai was known as the one who knew all the languages. You remember the story in the Megillah, how he heard them, yeah? Shaya beyemei Ezra. This is the time of Ezra, yeah? That's right. Kshe'alu min hagola be'abait hasheni. This is when they came up back from Babel during the second temple. Umiklalam, and the famous one that we are going to include are Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, Nehemiah, Ben Chachriah, Vechavreim, all these great prophets. Okay. Hem amru shlosha dvarim. They said three things. What are three things they said? Harbe dvarim amru. The truth is, what do you mean they said three things? They said millions of things. So why do they say three things? So there's a new rule in Pirkei Avot now. So we're going to learn it not just for now, for all Pirkei Avot. Whenever Pirkei Avot is going to say this expression, they used to say, comes up hundreds of times in Pirkei Avot, it doesn't mean that they used to speak it. It means that's how they acted. In other words, you saw this guy, you knew this is who he is. Just like lehavdil, to separate, you see Cristiano Ronaldo, you know this is soccer. You saw this guy, you know this is his teaching. This is what when they say, they used to say, it's not like they used to sit and preach these words. This is what he symbolized. Yeah, this is what he was. Yeah? So this is what, הרבה דברים אמרו, אלא שלושה דברים הללו אמרו שיש בהם קיום התורה. These three things have to do with Torah also. What are the first thing? Like we explained, הבו מתונים בדין, be careful in judgments, שאם בא דין לפניך פעם ושתיים ושלוש, that even if you got the same case once, twice, three times, לא תאמר דין זה כבר בא לפניי ושניתי ושילשתי בו. Don't say, oh, come on, this case comes in front of me every day. אלא הבו מתונים, כלומר ממתינים קודם שתסוכה דין. Even though you know what the judgment is, discuss it again. Take your time. Don't rush. That's one. ועמידו תלמידים הרבה. Oh, this is a good one. He said, stand a lot of children, a lot of students. What was the Jewish history at the time? So we have to remember the Jewish history at the time was like this. At the time, Rabban Gamliel was the Nasi Ador. He was the guy who was running the Jewish nation. The famous Rabban Gamliel, everybody knows about him. And Rabban Gamliel had a way to run his yeshiva. He says, look, I want serious people over here. People who are not serious, don't waste my time. Go home. He says, first of all, you have to have the highest IQ, top 1%. You don't have the top 1%, go home. Second of all, he says, that's not enough. You have to have good attributes. You have to be kind. You have to be a mensch. If you are lacking in any good attributes, I don't want you here. Go away. Third of all, you have to be a millionaire. You have to be rich. Because otherwise, you're going to get married. You'll have a wife. You'll have children. You need to feed them. Where's the money going to come from? So even if you're going to come to yeshiva, you know what you're going to be thinking about all day long? Where am I going to feed my family from? You can't. Go ahead. When you have money, when you be a millionaire, come back. So this is Rabban Gamliel. שאמר, Rabban Gamliel used to say, כל תלמיד שאין תוכו כברו, says every student that his inner is not like his outer. There was a rule in Rabban Gamliel's yeshiva. And this was the rule. If you learned it and you were caught not doing it, you were kicked out of yeshiva. If you didn't learn it, you have an excuse. You don't know. But if you learned something, even though it was at a very high level, and you didn't actually practice what you learned, get out. What are you here for? You playing around? We're here to be, we're real people over here. This is what it means, a student that his inner is not like his outer. He says, you can't preach and not do. There's no such thing. If you know the material, you have to do the material. אל להיכנס לבית המדרש. It says, don't come to learn. כמשמע לן, שמלמדים תורה לכל אדם. So from the men of the Great Assembly changed the way of Rabban Gamliel. It says, no, maybe it works until now. Right now we have a problem. It's not going to work anymore. So what do we have to do? This is what he did. שמלמדים תורה לכל אדם. It says we need to teach Torah to every person, not just to those 1% IQ. Those in the top zero. Everyone can come to yeshiva. Every person. ואין צריך לבדוק אחריו. And you don't go to check after him. If he learned something, he does it. Don't run after him to check if he does exactly what he learned. It's not your business. What are you running and checking?
Don't get a
Yeah. ובלבד שלא יהיה ידוע מעניינו שמעשיו מקולקלים ושמו תורה. Of course, if the guy completely goes off the way, of course don't take it. But you don't have to go and find out that he went off the way. Okay? And then third thing, like we mentioned before, ועשו סייג לתורה. And make a fence around the Torah. גדר שלא יבואו ליגע באיסור תורה. A fence so that the people are not going to go to transgress Torah commandments. כגון שניות לעריות. For example, prohibitions against illicit relationships. One of the prohibitions that the sages came up with is that you're not allowed to be in a closed room with another woman. Yeah? What are you and another woman doing in a room together? Forget about touching. Touching is a problem for the Torah. Yeah? But what are you doing with her in a place with another room? Those kind of things, this is what the decrees that they instituted. Ushvut leShabbat, and don't hold the pen on Shabbat. God never said not to hold the pen on Shabbat. God says do not write. But the sage says you'll come to hold the pen, you'll forget, and you're going to write. For example, Dechtiv, how did they learn this? Who gave them permission to do this? Because there's a verse that says, Veshamartem it mishmarti, you should guard my guardianship. This is a message for the sages. Asu mishmeret lemishmarti. And to learn from it, God wants to put fences for his Torah so that people are not going to fall off. Next. The Rebbe starts on page number 6 and he's going to ask our first question. The question is, במקומות רבים ישנו הביטוי מסיני. In many places you're going to hear this expression that Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. For example, what we said. Or we learn halacha leMoshe miSinai. It says halacha to Moshe from Sinai. It's not from Sinai, it's from God. What is it? Why does it always change to Sinai? Why they don't like God? Say halacha leMoshe from God. Or halacha leMoshe from Shavuos. Why do you have to mention the place? Mention the time, the holiday. Why do you have to say the place? What's so important about this place? And especially today, just a practical, we're not going to go into the Kabbalistic idea behind it, but the practical idea says, in Israel, there's thousands of graves that people go and visit. And the graves from 3,000 years ago, some of the graves. And people know, this is it. How come in Israel, people know this grave, and we don't know where Mount Sinai is? Practically. How? How is it possible that all these graves of these people we do know and Mount Sinai? So a practical application is, you know the answer?
No, I figure you're not going to make
That's Hasidic. That's a Hasidic interpretation, practical. Practical interpretation. So the practical interpretation, think about it. Where was Sinai? In the desert. No one lives there. So in Eretz Israel, there was always people who lived. So even if the Jews were not in that area, the people who were in the area knew over there's a big rabbi who's been buried. People were living in the area and it was passed down from generation to generation. In Sinai, nobody lives. So once they leave the desert, there's nobody to say, where's the place? Nobody knows. Just a practical application of why nobody knows. He says, he says, law from Moshe from Sinai. And we say, כל מה שתלמיד ותיק עתיד לחדש, נאמר למשה מסיני. It says, whatever you're going to come out, any conclusion in the Torah, Moshe already heard it at Mount Sinai, ועוד, and many other places. והרי לכאורה לא חשוב כאן העניין של סיני. The Rebbe asked, who cares? Who cares the place? Why do we need to know what the place was? שכן העיקר הוא שהקדוש ברוך הוא אמר את הדברים. The main thing is that God gave it. Not that Sinai gave it. והוא התברך בכל מקום, and God is in every place. לית אתר פנוי מנה. There's no place without him. ואם כן, לשם הדיוק מסיני. Why does they go? You see, they go out of the way to tell you it's not God that gave it to us. It's Sinai. It's Sinai that gave us the Torah. In other words, they're trying to teach us something. And we have to start learning what does the Pirkei Avot trying to teach you when it comes to Torah. So let's start. רבותינו ז"ל מספרים, our sages say, famous story, you know what we can do? Let's skip this. We can read it straight from the source. Source number 1, where it says the Midrash Tehillim. כאשר רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לתת תורה לעם ישראל, when God wanted to give the Torah to the Jewish nation, באו הרי הכרמל והתבור והופיע לפני בורא העולם. 2 other mountains came, the Har Carmel and Har Tavor came in front of God and they complained. What was the complaint? Amar Har Tavor, the Har Tavor said, עלי נאה שתשרה שכינה. It is more befitting that you're going to give the Torah on me. Why? God asking, why more befitting on you? He says, I'm taller. I'm the tallest mountain. כי אני גבוה יותר מכל הערים. I am so tall that what the Midrash says, by the way, this is another thing. Everybody knows about the flood. Everybody remembers the story of the flood? So the flood happened all over the world except in one place. In Israel, there was no flood. Now, when I say in Israel there was no flood, what do I mean? It didn't help them much, but there was no flood. Every other place in the world, both water from underground went up and rain came down. In Israel, no water came from the underground and no water came down. The water seeped in from other places, right? It didn't help them much. But it didn't flood, so-called. The flood itself wasn't in Israel. So it says to such an extent that Tavor remained above. Okay? מכל הערים, ואף לא ירדו עלי מי המבול. And this is what he says, even the waters of the flood did not come down on me. In other words, I didn't even sin. That's what he's telling God. I'm so lofty, I'm so righteous, I'm so high, I never sinned. In other words, the flood never came down on me. There was no reason to destroy me. That's how lofty I am. Okay? Page number 7. Amar Har Carmel. Har Carmel also has his things. Har Carmel says, אני ראוי לזקוק בכך שניתנת תורה עליי. It says, I befit that the Torah should be given on me. שכן כאשר נקרא יום סוף, because when God split the sea, הלכתי ונכנסתי בתוך הים. It was my land. I went all the way there and I replaced the land in Egypt so that people will walk on me. ובני ישראל חצו עליי את הים. The Jewish people crossed on me the sea. אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, so God said, an interesting verse. כבר נפסלתם, it says, just by you coming here and complaining, I don't want you. You're already no good. Why? שכן יש בכם גבהות רוח. Because you're arrogant. You've got some arrogance in you. You're haughty. אמרו ההרים, and the sage says, maybe we're haughty, I'm righteous. And the other guy was able to give this Jewish there, but we are right. We might be haughty, but we are right. So אמרו ההרים, האם לא תעניק לנו שכר? So what, a righteous person doesn't get reward? Har Tavor said. So now what? Because I'm righteous, I'm not going to get reward? Because I know I'm righteous? Just because mentioning that I'm righteous means I'm not going to get reward? So I'm righteous. Nothing wrong with being righteous. So השיב להם בורא העולם. So God told them back. את שכרכם תקבלו. The fact that you're righteous, you're going to get reward. Right? I'm going to give you a reward. שכן בימי הנביאה דבורה, in the days of the prophetess Devorah, ינצחו בני ישראל את צבא סיסרא על הר תבור. The military victory is going to be on you, on that mountain. ובימי אליהו הנביא יתרחש הנס על הר הכרמל. And in the days of Eliyahu the prophet, the big miracle is going to be on the Carmel mountain. אך למתן תורה אבחר לי אחר. But this is for other things. מתן תורה, I need someone special. I'm going to choose something else. את הר סיני. I'm going to choose mountain of Sinai. Why? שהוא ההר השפל מכולכם. Because it's the lowest mountain. אבחר לי, כמו שנאמר, because why? There's a verse that says, מרום וקדוש אשכון ואת דקה ושפל רוח. It says, God dwells with whom? With those who are crushed and humble in spirit. This is where God wants. God's want no haughtiness, in order to receive the Torah. And the Rebbe asks a question. He says, I don't understand. Lechora, it says, Im yesh chashivut leshvelut. If it's so great to be humble, hayta tzricha haTorah linaten bebika. God should have given the Torah in a valley. Yeah, that's a humble place, not on a mountain. So if you're saying humbleness, so give it in a valley. Don't give it, or a flat area at least, exactly. Or if you want even to go better, a valley. בבקעה, או לפחות במישור, או אצליס לפלדריה, אבל לא בהר, not in a mountain. ואם יש חשיבות לגובה, and if, so obviously you do think that height is important, because you gave it in a mountain. So if you think that height is important, what about Har Tavor? Har Tavor is higher. So what are you doing? You're playing both games over here. You want a mountain, you want haughtiness, but a little bit. What does that mean? Yeah? Yeah? If you want a real humble mountain, give it on a valley. Yeah? הייתה צריכה התורה להינתן על הערים שהם גבורים מהר סיני. So if it's important that it will be a mountain, choose a better mountain. Which anyway, you're not choosing the right way. אלא העניין הוא, but the Rebbe explains, שכוונת מתן תורה היא ייחוד שני ניגודים. As we're going to see with the entire Torah, especially with those, we already experienced it in the entire Torah, that what Judaism is, taking both opposite aspects and putting it together. This is the entire Torah everywhere. You're going to take two opposite ideas, you're going to take the positive aspects of them without the negative aspects, and you're going to put them together. And this is what Judaism is about. So you're going to want the mountain, the good part of the mountain without the bad part of the mountain. In other words, you want the mountain to be proud, but not arrogant. Yeah? It's important that the person will be proud, but not arrogant. But he's not allowed to be completely, in Hebrew it says smartut, like a low life. That you're not allowed to be. Yeah? You have to be proud, but you cannot be arrogant. אלא העניין הוא שכוונת מתן תורה ייחוד שני ניגודים. This is מתן Torah, taking two aspects. שפלות והגבהה. You're going to take humility and pride, and you're going to put both humility and pride, you're going to combine them. This is what מתן Torah is all about. Page number 8. לקבלת התורה דרושים שני תנאים. For receiving the Torah, we need two requirements. Tokef, we need to be proudness, you need to be frum, proud, והגבהת רוח, which means a person has to feel proud on the fact that he's a Jew, ולא להתבייש מפני המלעיגים, הוא התחלת כל השולחן ערוך. Let's read at the beginning of Shulchan Aruch. Let's jump to source number 2. The beginning of the Shulchan Aruch starts with a ruling of how a Jew has to act. The first ruling is what? Yehuda ben Teima Omer, Yehuda ben Teima says, Heve az kenamer, you have to be bold as a leopard, vekal kenesher, light like an eagle, ratz ketzvi, fast like a deer, vegibor kari, and strong as a lion. To do what? La'asot retzon Rabbi Hashem v'shamayim, to do God's will in the heavens. Az kenamer, and the first thing that he tells us, you have to be bold as a leopard. What do you mean? A leopard is bold. He's not afraid of anything. If there's 50 men guarding a cow, a lion is not going to attack. A lion is going to be afraid of the man, and he's not going to attack. Yeah? A leopard will wait, and he will crawl in between. He's not afraid. And he will go for the cow anyway. Why? This is the boldness. It says you have to have the same boldness as a leopard. The boldness, but when do you have to be boldness? Not when it comes to you, when it comes to God. God told you to do something, you have to be a proud Jew. This is what we learn from the tiger. A proud Jew. שלא להתבייש בפני בני אדם מלעיגים. People are going to make fun of you. I'll give you an example, it just happened. Politically, there's a reason why there's no pictures of Netanyahu wearing tefillin for the last 40 years. You couldn't... very good. But politically, there was a reason why. Because Israel is so split, and Netanyahu was afraid that if he's going to be found, people of him praying tefillin, he says, oh, now he joined the other side. So even though he did put on tefillin before, but you don't see pictures. He made sure there's not going to be a picture. Now, two days ago, that's why I brought it up. Yeah. 2 days ago, all of a sudden, you see Netanyahu stands. All the world is against Israel. Everybody says, you know what, you guys, you can all be against me. You hate me anyway, but I'm going to stand here as a proud Jew with tefillin on. This is what it means as Kanamer. I don't care what everybody says. This is God. I'm a Jew. I put on tefillin. That's it. You're going to make fun of it? Go ahead, make fun of it. The left is going to make fun of it. The people are going to say he's just like the Muslims. He's right-wing ideology, crazy. Whatever they say, you have to be proud. You don't have to be embarrassed. Okay, that's the first thing. And on the second thing, with it together, you have to be humble. Now, it's very strange. We know who's the humblest of all men? Moshe Rabbeinu. I'll tell you a story about Moshe Rabbeinu. When Aaron's children, Nadav and Avihu, passed away, Moshe came to Aaron to console him that his two children passed away. And he told Aaron, I knew it was going to happen. In other words, I knew that once the temple is built, God is going to take those who are close to him. Because God told me, God told me, Bekrovai ekadesh, in my closest ones, I'm going to make this sanctuary holy. In other words, somebody will need to pay the price. And who is going to pay the price? Those who are closest to me. And he told Aaron, all my life I knew who they were. It was me and you. Me and you are the closest to God. Yeah, that's what he says. And now he tells Aaron, I see that Nadav and Avihu are greater than both me and you. Why? Because God considered them his closest, more than me and you. Yeah? But what do we see from it? That if you ask Moshe, who's the closest to God? Moshe will tell you, I'm the closest to God. He doesn't have a problem to tell you. So where's humbleness? How can you have both? The fact that he was closest to God, he wasn't arrogant. In other words, there's a difference between being arrogant and being proud. He was a proud Jew and he knew Israel, but he wasn't arrogant. There's a big difference between arrogant and proud. Yeah? We're not going to get into it so much right now because that's not so much our thing. Maybe next time we're going to discuss this a little bit more. The Rebbe continues, ואין שני עניינים אלו תוקף והגבהה והתבלות וענווה סותרים זה את זה. And they are not contradictory. Pride and strength and also nullification. שכן התוקף שיש לאדם אינו נובעת מהרגשת ישותו ומצאתו העצמית. The proudness of a Jew being a Jew is not self-importance. The proudness comes from the fact that I have a responsibility. God put me up here in this world for a reason, and I do God's mission. That's the proudness. Not that I'm better than you. That's not the proudness. The proudness is that, yes, I'm a Jew, I have a responsibility, and I have to do what I have to do. הוא יודע יפה את מעמדו ומצבו שכל אחד טוב ממנו. In other words, Mount Sinai knew, just like Moshe knew. What did Moshe? It says one of the things that Moshe was amazed with, that he looked at us, at this generation, and he didn't understand why God didn't give the Torah to any one of us better than him. He came to God, Moshe, when he looked, God showed him the entire generations until Mashiach. So he saw us, and in our generation, he says to God, why are you giving the Torah through me? You should give it to what? Through any one of these guys. So if you think to yourself, what do you mean, why? You're righteous. Any of us are righteous? What are you talking about? Obviously it's through you. But he was saying like this, look, that's not how you measure a person. How do you measure a person? If God, Moshe Rabbeinu was thinking, if God would have given me their capabilities, in other words, their IQ, their emotional status, their attributes, I would not have been half as good as them. The only reason why I'm good is because God made me this way. You see, this is the difference between being arrogant. It's not that he didn't appreciate what God gave him. He knew it didn't come from him. I didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. He said, these guys, they want to sin all day long and they fight not to sin. I never wanted to sin. This is what you're thinking. This is what it means being humble and know who you are at the same time. ובכל זאת יש לו תוקף בתורה ומצוות. Nevertheless, even though, look at us, none of us thinks that we are better than the generation of Rashi, right? Or than the generation of Spain, right? We don't think. But you know what? We are. In many aspects we are better than the generation of Spain. You know how? During the generation of Spain, millions of Jews became Marranos.
Became what?
Marranos. They became Christians.
Oh.
Yeah? A lot of Jews happened. During the Holocaust, even if people who could escape, they didn't want to escape. You hear so many stories of Jews when the Germans came to Poland, came out to the city square, and they told the Germans, I'm Jewish. I'm sitting with my Israel. They didn't go and hide. It says, where did that come from? In the time of the Spain, it didn't happen. They were greater people. There is something in our generation, and those Moshe saw that advantage at every generation, and he was humbled by us. Yeah? משום שהולך הוא לקיים את רצון הקדוש ברוך הוא. And the Jew that did it wasn't necessarily religious. He did it not because he was proud, he was thinking he's better than any other generation before him. He's doing it because he wanted to serve God. ומסור הוא ושקוע הוא כל כך בקיום רצון הקדוש ברוך הוא. He is so involved in doing God's will, עד שהוא מקבל בזה את כל התוקף הגדול ביותר, ומסתלקים כל המינויים ועיכובים. הוא שרוי בתכלית ההתבטלות, he becomes completely nullified, ויחד עם זאת בהגבהת רוח ותוקף לקבל התורה לקבל את הרצון. שזה ג'יבה כמו שרבנו. He's completely dedicated to God in one side. If anybody would tell Moshe, don't do what God told you, he's going to go crazy. What do you mean don't do? I'm going to do. And on the other way, he's still humble in front of every person. And he thinks every person in one aspect, even people like us, are better than him. Okay? So this is the first consideration. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. You remember we asked the question, why he didn't say from God? So let's see now on page 11. מטרת המשנה אינה לספר ולמנות את הסדר של קבלת התורה. The Mishnah is not telling you all the stages where the Torah came down. If you want to know, there's about, until Anshekes HaGdolah, there's about 40 generations, I think, that come down. It enumerates 5 of them. Which 5? 5 that helps you what? Receive the Torah. Over here, God is telling you, you want to learn Torah? You need 5 requirements. Or you need 4 requirements. These are the requirements of a person who wants to learn. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see slowly. This is the requirement. If you want to learn Torah, you need to have these requirements. Otherwise, you're not learning Torah. So let's see. משום שבין משה רבנו עד אנשי כנסת הגדולה היו הרבה יותר דורות מאשר מה שמוזכר במשנה. There were many more generations than what is mentioned in the Mishnah. Just like the Rambam explains. אלא התנא רוצה לומר במשנה. So what is it teaching us? It's not teaching us historical facts. מהם תכונות הנפש הנדרשות מהאדם בתור הכנה ללימוד תורה? It says you want to learn Torah? You need to have preparations. You need to do some things. What is the first things? ועל כך הוא אומר שאלו התכונות, and this is what you need to prepare yourself. This is how you learn Torah. First of all, you need to have the attribute of Moshe. Then you have to have the attribute of Yoshua. Then you have to have the attribute of the Zkenim, the elders. Then the prophets, and then the men of the great assembly. There's going to be 5 stages in learning Torah, and each one represents a stage of something you have to do in order to learn Torah. Learning Torah is not college. It's something else, as we're going to see soon. אין מדובר כאן על הנהגות שצריך לעשות בתור הכנה ללימוד. We're not talking about preparation for learning. אלא לתכונות הנפש שצריך בתור הכנה ללימוד. It means how you need to prepare yourself so that you'll be able to be a student. How do you approach Torah so you can actually absorb it? So let's see. Page 11, the first stage is Moshe. התכונה של ביטול, the first element is nullification. What does nullification means? חשובה, it is important. משום שדווקא על ידיה אדם נהיה כלי לתורה. Only through it, a person becomes a vessel to Torah. See, many times we read something in the Torah, and we say immediately it doesn't make sense. Right? And did you like it or not? This thing that it doesn't make sense means you're not nullified. Every time, and it will happen to you billions of times. To those who learn Torah all day long, it happens constantly. God says the first thing, you want to learn Torah? If God says black is white, now your job is to try to understand why black is white. You can approach it with coming to understand, no, it doesn't make sense that black is white. Black is not white. Yeah? No, you have to put your brains now, why black is white. This is what you have to be. In other words, completely new. Start new. Those concepts that Torah is giving you is not concepts that comes through logic many times, or it comes through a different logic. And if you're going to use your own logic, you're not going to come to it. In other words, nullify your way of thinking. Right now. Later on, we're going to bring it back. But right now, in order to start Torah, in order to be a vessel to receive, you cannot come with preconceived ideas to the matter. הדרך שהיה אצל משה רבנו, just like it was by Moshe, שהוא היה עניו מכל אדם. That we know about Moshe, he was the humblest of all men. That's why he was able to bring the deepest Torah to all men. ומקשרית זום גם לכך שניתנת התורה להר סיני. And now it's understood why the first attribute was why. How do you get the Torah? It has to be brought down on the mountain of Sinai, on the mountain of humbleness. Humbleness is the key to understanding Torah. כפי שהגמרא אומרת, לעולם ילמוד אדם מידת קונו, it says a person should always to learn from God's conduct, שהשם נתן את התורה לא על הערים הגבוהים, just like God didn't give the Torah on the lofty. In other words, God did not give Torah to those with high IQ. This is one of the biggest difference between Torah learning and between sciences. I'll give you an example. When it comes to sciences, in some subjects, if a person doesn't have an IQ of above 120, don't bother. Don't bother. You're wasting your time. In other words, you're not going to be able to get there. You won't. It's not for you. Some sciences, it's too complicated. Your brain is not going to be able to do it. So don't even bother. It's not going to work. You're not going to be successful. It's simple. You're not going to be a top mathematician with a low IQ. When it comes to Torah, it doesn't work this way. IQ has got nothing to do with the learning of Torah. You know what is the pre-requirement in learning of Torah? Erase your mind. Humbleness. Completely dedication to God's word. A person with a high IQ and doesn't erase his mind, or a person with an average IQ which is completely humble, the person with average IQ will learn more than the person with high IQ. And by the way, I always doubted this statement. I don't know if we will have time right now, but maybe some other time I'll tell you a story. In yeshiva, there was a kid that learned with me in yeshiva. He wasn't very learned. He wasn't a very high IQ. Yeah? And he came with humbleness and he came with hard work. And he actually learned certain things better than the rabbis over there. To show you that it's not IQ when it comes to Torah. He will never be able to do it in the sciences. That requires high IQ. Torah is not one of the requirements, high IQ. This was the mistake with Rabban Gamliel. You remember Rabban Gamliel? He thought it was one of the requirements. God says no. Humbleness is one of the requirements. Okay? אלא על הר סיני שהוא נמוך מכל הערים, משום שהענווה בביטול הם הכלי על התורה. It was given specifically on Har Sinai. Let's go to page 12. התכונה של ביטול חשובה. Humility is a necessary character trait, משום שדווקא על ידי האדם נהיה כלי תורה. Through it, a person becomes a vessel to Torah. הדרך שהיה אצל משה רבנו, just like it was by משה, שהוא היה ענב מאוד מכל האדם, he was the humblest from everybody. ומקשרים זאת, we just read it. skip to the second paragraph. את חשיבות עניין הענווה ללימוד התורה של משה רבנו, אנו למדים גם מכך שכאשר משה אמר where do we see it else? We see it also from the negative. You see, after Yitro came and they made divisions, they made courts to help Moshe, Moshe told them, guys, whatever you can judge, do to judge, and whatever is hard for you, come to me and I will judge it. When Moshe said it, he didn't mean come to me. He meant come to me so I can ask God. But just because he said the words that you can understand it differently, yeah, we know for sure that's not what he meant. He didn't mean comes to me, I will solve the problem for you. He says, come to me, I will ask God, and then we will figure it out. Yeah, but just because it could be understood that I will answer it, and let's look at the verse, והדבר אשר יקשה מכם תקרבון אליי, the thing that is hard for you, bring close to me, אמירה שנשמעת כמו משהו, that's what he meant. He meant I will ask God. But since you can interpret it in another manner, הוא נענש על כך. He was punished. And by the way, what was the punishment? He forgot Torah. That's why he forgot a couple of parshias that was given to other people, not him. Because he was not humble. As we said, humbleness is the way for Torah. He was humble. But for him, he's such a big righteous, he just could interpret as if he's not humble, and already he couldn't bring down the Torah. We're going to skip the brackets. והדרך זה צריך להיות אצל כל יהודי, ענווה וביטול בתור הקדמה לתורה. So every Jew has to start learning Torah through humbleness. That's the first rule. If you come to class and you think you know, you're going to be teaching, you're not coming to class, you're not going to learn. וכפי שאנו אומרים, just like we say when it comes to prayer, we say, והנפשי כעפר לכל תהיה. Before every time we pray, it says, my soul is going to be like dust of the earth. And then we say, open my heart to your Torah. This is before Shmona Esrei. Every time before we daven, this is what we say. By humbling ourselves, we're going to be a vessel to receive God's Torah. So that's the first stage. So again, what's the first stage? Humbleness. Al Yoshua Ne'emar, on Yoshua it says, this is another thing about Yoshua. Does everybody, before we even get to Yoshua, practically Yoshua was a sinner. Now, you're laughing, but why am I saying he's a sinner? The entire time in the desert, he wasn't married. Yoshua never got married in the desert. You know when Yoshua got married? Once they entered Israel. Just like Moshe. Moshe also wasn't married in the desert. He divorced his wife. And he didn't do the most important commandment. Be fruitful and multiply. He needs to have a boy and a girl. Moshe never had a boy and a girl. And when Aaron and Miriam told him, you're wrong, remarry your wife, they were punished. Because God told them, Moshe is different. Yoshua was as different as Moshe. That's why Yoshua was never married in the desert. He didn't do the most important mitzvah of be fruitful and multiply. But that was in the desert. Once he entered the land, immediately he got married. By the way, does anybody know who Yeshua married? Very good. Yeshua married Rachav. Rachav, famous, we don't want to mention what. Okay? There's an Indian for that, we're going to learn it some other time. Al Yoshua Ne'emar, but what's the second value of learning Torah? Lo yamish mitoch ha'oel. He didn't move from the tent. What does it mean? ליהושע היה מעלות רבות. Yoshua had great qualities. אך כאן מדובר על המעלה שלו בנוגע לתורה. Over here we're talking about his greatness in Torah. What is it? וזו הייתה התכונה שלא ימיש מתוך האוהל. הוא התמיד בלימוד התורה וכו' והיה בא. In other words, first thing is humbleness, and second thing is Yoshua. What does Yoshua means? Yoshua means every second of your day, you know what you do? You learn Torah. That's your life. Torah is your life. You see, Torah is not a hobby. Some people think Torah is a hobby. I learn 5 minutes over here, I learn 5 minutes over there, I'll be acquired to it. Maybe you will be able to acquire information. You don't acquire Torah by making it a hobby. It has to become your life. This is what you do. You know what I am? I'm a Torah learner. That's what I do all day long. זאת אומרת, what does it mean? לאחר שלאדם יש תכונה של ביטול, after a person nullifies himself, אומרים לו שהלימוד שלו צריך להיות באופן שלא ימיש מתוך האוהל. That he is not allowed to move from the tent. By the way, we're not necessarily talking about quantity of time. Which means, we're not necessarily talking about over here that you have to learn 18 hours a day. You can learn 1 hour there, but this 1 hour you have to be lo yamish mitoch ha'ohel. What does it mean? In this 1 hour, you cannot have your phone down over here and look every 2 minutes what text came in and look and then go back. That means you're not in learning Torah. Learning Torah means you're concentrating on learning Torah. There's nothing else. The world doesn't exist. You're not married. You don't have a wife. You don't have children. And the business is not in trouble. That's what it means learning Torah. There's no world. There's only Torah. This is what we learn. That's the second attribute. And again, the quality is the important part, not the quantity. 1 hour could be considered learning Torah, and 18 hours could be considered not learning Torah. Right? Next. בדוגמה לכך, המדרש אומר שלא ניתנה התורה לדרוש אלא לאוכלי המן. The Torah tells us that the Torah was given only for the generations that ate the manna. מה הפירוש בכך? What does it mean? והרי התורה ניתנה לכל היהודים, בכל התורות. The Torah was given to all Jews in all generations. Why does it say it was only given to those who ate man? והביאור הוא, so now we're going to understand what does it mean? שבשעה שאדם לומד תורה, at the time that the person learns Torah, הוא צריך לשים את עצמו במצב הנפשי של אוכלי המן. He needs to put himself in the same mindset of the people in the desert. Were the people in the desert concerned about where's the food going to come from? No, they knew God is supplying. Don't think about the wife, don't think about the children, don't think about where the food is coming from. That's how you learn Torah. This is one of the requirements of learning Torah. שלא יהיה להם שום דאגות. They had no worries. Who's going to wash our clothes? God is going to wash your clothes. Where we got water from? God is going to give you water. There's no other worries when you learn Torah. That 1 hour that you dedicated for learning Torah has to be completely clean from all other thoughts. Completely. That's the second. If you want to acquire Torah, that's the second attribute after humbleness. היה להם אוכל משמיים, ולא הייתה להם שום תעסוקה אחרת. הדבר היחידי שהיה להם ללמוד תורה. The only thing that they could do is learn Torah. ועל זה אומרים, and this we say, שבשעה שיהודי לומד תורה, הוא צריך להתנתק מכל דאגות היום. When a Jew learns Torah, he needs to have no worries. And the entire learning Torah will be like the generation of the desert. And this is what Yoshua represents. A person that doesn't move from the tent. So now we have 2 rules of learning Torah. Humbleness and dedication to the cause completely. At the time that you learn, you're dedicated to the learning. Completely. There's no other things. 2 rules. You want to learn Torah? You have to have these 2 rules. Third thing. Page 14. התכונות שהזכרנו, the qualities that we said before, which was humility and complete focus, הם רק ההכנה ללימוד, אך אין די בם. They're only the preparation, but they're not everything. Then comes the third stage. בנוסף לכך, הלימוד עצמו צריך להיות באופן של עמל ויגיעה בתורה. The learning itself has to be how? Tough. What does it mean tough? If you don't have a headache at the end of your learning, you didn't learn. You need to exert. You know what exert means? Just like in exercise. If your muscles don't ache after exercise, don't tell me you exercise. You didn't exercise. If your muscles don't ache, you didn't exercise. If you learned and you don't have a headache, you didn't learn. That's what it means. And where do we learn it? שזהו עניין הזקנים. This we learn from the elders. What is elders? The word zaken, the zayin, it's an acronym. The word zaken. It's zayin means ze, and kuf nun means kana, boat. This one boat. This one boat what? This one boat wisdom. Yeah? The wisdom that you buy through hard work. Buying means putting money in, putting time in, putting effort in. רק על ידי היגיעה בתורה, only through hard work, התורה נעשית קניינו של הלומד. The Torah becomes bought by the person. If it comes easy, you never buy it. It's not yours. It has to come through hard effort. You need to break your head. If you didn't break your head, and you can see it. Things that anybody who learned in college, things that took you a long time to understand, but in the end you understood, you remember forever. Things that didn't take you a long time to understand, and you just understood it, next week you forgot. The things that you acquired through hard work, stay. Things that you didn't acquire through hard work, go away. משום שהוא התייגע עליה. זה לא מתנה או ירושה, it didn't come as a present, it didn't come as inheritance, even though the Torah is also a present and inheritance, but not this aspect. Your learning has to come through hard work. לימוד התורה באופן מיטבי יכול להגיע רק על ידי יגיעה, it has to come through hard work. A person could be talented, he can come and be born to a good family, he can go to the best schools in the world. But if he's not going to sit down and break his head, he's not going to acquire Torah. It's not going to be his. The Torah is not going to be his. Okay. That's the third thing. So we've got three things already now. Humbleness. What's the second one? Devotion. And the third one? Hard work. Very good. בכדי להבין את הלימוד הנכון the fourth aspect is going to be what? You remember? Prophets. Right? What does the prophet represent when you say in the Torah? בכדי להבין את הלימוד הנכון, in order to understand the right kind of learning, ולכוון לאמיתתה של תורה, to know the truth of the Torah, צריך עזרה מיוחדת מן השמיים. You need help from heaven. ועל זה דורשת הגמרא, and this the Gemara says, על הפסוק, והשם עמו, God says, and God is with him. What does it mean, and God is with him? God, it means that the law is like him. When it says God is with him, means that the law is like him. איך האדם זוכה שההלכה תהיה כמותו? How does a person merit that the law is going to be like you? I'm going to explain this a little bit more. על ידי שהשם עמו סייעתא דשמיא מיוחדת. וזהו עניינה של הנבואה סייעתא דשמיא. This is what it means, prophecy, סייעתא דשמיא. In other words, even after you have all these attributes, let's look in source number 3 is going to explain to us exactly, so I don't have to talk a lot. Source number 3 is going to be on page 15, and we're going to see where it's coming from. Shanu Chachamim, the sages learned. En lemedim halacha, it says a person cannot learn law, lo mipi Talmud, not from the Gemara. In other words, if we open up in a Gemara right now, and we're going to start learning the Gemara, you're going to start the logic of the sages, this way and that way, this way and that way. And then you're going to understand. You understand perfectly, this way and that way. It says, you know what you don't know? Even if you understand correctly, you don't know the law. You know the logic of the law, but you don't know the law. Do you know why you don't know the law? Because I don't know if God is with you. I know logic is with you. Halacha, Hashem imo, God is with him, means God needs to be with you for you to know the law, the halacha. Let's see. אין הלכה לא מפי התלמוד ממה שהרב מלמד. from the fact that the Rabbi teaches you. ולא בפי המעשה. Maybe you can say, maybe I cannot learn from the Gemara, but I can look at the Rabbi. I can see how he acts, and from the way he acts, I can know what to do. Look at Moshe, see what he does, I can learn what to do. Can you do that? Can you look at Moshe and see what he does and learn what to do? Why not? Because he sins. Where does Moshe sin? He divorced his wife. He doesn't have any children. Are you allowed to look at Moshe and do what he does?
You're allowed if you understand his greatness.
He's not
going to get married because Hashem said, stay with me.
Are you allowed, when he says, mipi ha'maaseh, to do what he does? If he does it, therefore it's a good thing to do.
Right.
Are you allowed to do it?
You cannot.
Why? Look how interesting. You cannot learn it from the logic. You cannot learn it from the deeds. שרואה שכך עשו מעשה, עד שיאמרו לו, until they will tell him. In other words, not the logic, not the deeds of the rabbis, but what? Until Moshe comes and tells you, this is the law. This is what God wants. עד שיאמרו לו, הלכה למעשה מוגדר עליו ומסוים. Until they tell him this directly. This you should do, this you should not do. Nothing to do with logic, nothing to do with anything. Not what I do, not what you do. This is what you're supposed. ששאל והורו לו הלכה בו. In other words, halacha is something else completely than Gemara, than learning. It's got nothing to do with each other. פירוש, let's understand. כשהתלמיד יושב לפני רבו ומעיינים בהלכה, when a student sits in front of his rabbi and they're learning the logic, ועלה בידם מהסברה שההלכה כרבי פלוני, and they came, according to logic, it makes that Shmuel makes more sense than Rav. I can see it. Logic dictates that Shmuel's way is better than Rav's way. אין אותו תלמיד רשאי לסמוך על מה שעלה בידם מן הסברה ולעשות בו מעשה. Now the student cannot come and do it. Oh, we discussed it with the rabbi. It was more logical. Therefore, I can do what Rav or what Shmuel said and not what Rav said. לפי שיש לחוש שמא לא עינו כל צרכן ולא דקדקו כראוי. Because we're worried, maybe they didn't look so deep. Maybe they didn't go all the way down. But look at how strange. But if he comes to his rabbi and he asks him, what's the halacha? And the rabbi goes to the Gemara. And the rabbi learns the Gemara the second time. And he tells him the halacha, then he can rely. So the question, I don't understand. In the morning when we learn Gemara, I ask you the question, we came to a conclusion, right? And the conclusion we both came to, I cannot trust you. In the afternoon, I came to you with the question that actually we discussed in the morning in the Gemara, and I'm asking you practically. And practically now, you're using your brain, exactly what you're using, and now I can't trust you? What's the difference? How does it make sense? אם אמר לו רבו הלכה למעשה, ילך ויעשה מעשה. If you ask him a practical application, not a learning application, a practical application of the halacha, then you can do it. Why? לפי שלא יאמר לו דבר הלכה למעשה, אלא לאחר עיון ודקדוק, ולאחר שנתברר לו הדבר כהוגן. There's a difference between when you come to a rabbi and you ask for a logic, or when you come to the rabbi and you ask for halacha. What's the difference? One is Hashem imo, and the other one Hashem is not imo. In other words, the rabbi has to have fear of heaven. When you're talking about logic, when you're talking to me about logic, the svara over here, the logic over here, and the logic over here, I don't have to have fear of heaven. I'm talking to you pure intellect. There's no heaven. But now I have to tell you what God wants. The fear of heaven is going to make sure that I'm going to come to the right decision, that God is going to be with me. In other words, I'm so scared to give you the wrong information that God is going to be with me to help me to tell you the right thing to do. This is the fourth thing you need, that God is going to be with you. And how do you get God to be with him? If the rabbi doesn't have fear of heaven, you have some rabbis who say, yeah, I learned this, boom, boom, boom. No. You don't just say, halacha, I learned this, boom, 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 boom. You have to tremble that what you This is God's way. And this is the fourth thing that we need. A person needs to have the fear of heaven. משום, because שכזה עניין שנוגע לפועל, הרי אז לימוד התורה שלו הוא באופן אחר לגמרי. Because he knows this is God's will. Now he's learning Torah, not just as a stimulation, just intellect, just logic. It's not an exercise in logic anymore. This is what God wants. You need to have fear. It's frightening to give the wrong thing. וכפי שמואר בחסידו, שבשעה שמדובר על לימוד בכדי לדעת, איך לפסוק הלכה לפועל, that at the time that you are talking about how to actually make הלכה, היגיעה והלימוד הם מדרגה הגבוהה ביותר. This is the hardest way of learning, when you're trying to put what God actually wants. שעל ידי כך מקבלים לאמת. In other words, you put yourself in a different gear, not in a logical gear, in a logic and fearful gear. וזה היה עניינם של אנשי כנסת הגדולה. And this was the men of the great assembly, that they להורות הלכה למעשה ולתקן תקנות מעשיות. In other words, it wasn't just philosophical exercise of intellect, who's right, Rav or Shmuel. No, it was practical halacha. That's what they're saying. We're not dealing with Gemaras and Pilpulim and this. What does the Jew have to do? Okay. Let's do this part. Also, I'm going to do it quickly. It's an interesting part. We're going to do it very quickly. It says over here, on page 16, I'm going to skip a couple of places because we don't have much time, about Yoshua ben Prachya. Yoshua ben Prachya says three things. He says, make for yourself a rabbi, which means don't learn from 50 people. Choose one rabbi and learn most of your Torah from him. K'neh lecha chaver. He says you have to acquire a friend. And we said what acquire already means. Acquire means invest. Time, money. Invest yourself in a friend. In order to buy a friend, you need to be invested in him. Yeah, otherwise he's not a real friend. And the third thing that Yoshua ben Prachya says, always judge a person favorably. And on this one, we need to learn. Let's go to page 17 and see what happened. Why did he say, Yoshua ben Prachya, this statement? So page 17 goes like this. Source number 4. כשעמד ינאי המלך על החכמים להרגם, when Yanai, the king, killed all the sages, שמעון בן שטח את מינתו אחותו. So the sister of Shimon ben Shatach hid him. ורבי יהושע ben Brachya, וישו, and at the time there was two other sages, she killed most of the other sages, two other sages ran away. Who were the two other sages? Yoshua ben Prachya and Jesus. Yeah, Yoshua ben Prachya and Jesus ran to Alexandria of Egypt. Yeah, these two ran to Alexandria. כשנעשה שלום בין המלך ינאי וחכמים, after there was a time he killed all the sages, so whatever remained, and there was peace between them, the Yanai and the king, and there, שלח לו שמעון בן שטח. They summoned Rabbi Yoshua to return. So Rabbi Yoshua told Shimon ben Shatach, hey, come back. It's safe. We can come back. לך אל אלכסנדריה של מצרים אחותי, בעלי שרוי בתוכך, ואנוכי יושבת שוממה. It says, what are you sitting in Alexandria when Jerusalem needs you? Pretty much, that's what he tells him. עמד ובא, so Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya is coming back with Yeshu. Yeah, they're both coming back. Him and Jesus are walking back. ונזדמן לו פונדק אחד. And he came on the way in an inn. Now they heard this great sage, Yoshua ben Prachya is coming. So they gave him great honors in the inn. They made a whole feast for him. עשו לו כבוד גדול. They made for him a big feast. אמר, he said, כמה נאה אכסניה זו. So Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya said, what a great place you guys have over here. Look at the great things that you put over here. אמר לו, Rabbi, עיני הטרוטות. So Jesus said, Rabbi, look, the eyes of the hostess, she's pozelet. She looks, she looks to the side. Her eyes, there's something wrong with her eyes. She doesn't have beautiful eyes. She has a crazy eye. אמר לו, so Yoshua ben Parachia tell to him, Rasha. He told him, you're an evil guy. People are doing you a favor, and this is what you're looking at? That you're looking, yeah? בכך אתה עוסק. First of all, what are you looking at women for? This is what you're concerned about? She's giving you food. She's making you bed. She's giving you all the best, and this is what you're concerned about? Hey, I don't like her eyes. This is what's in your brain? הוציאו 400 שפרות ונידאו. He brought 400 shofars, and he excommunicated him. He says, go, we don't want you in our community. You're excommunicated, don't be with us. You're not ra'ui, you're not befitting to be one of us. Get away. You're evil. Pretty much that's what he told him. כל ים בא לפניו ואמר לו, קבני. So Yeshu, Jesus didn't give up. This was his rabbi. Every day he used to come and he used to say, please take me back. I did tshuva. I'm doing tshuva, I'm telling you, I'm doing tshuva. I want back. ולא השגיח בו. He didn't notice him. יום אחד היה קורא שמע, there was one day that Rabbi Yoshua ben Parachia was reading the Shema, הוא בא לפניו, he came to him, and from heaven, God told him, accept him now. Accept him. Accept Yeshua. It's time. He learned his lesson. Accept him back. ואמר לקבלו, and he told him, but he's in the middle of Shema. So what do you do when you're in the middle of Shema and somebody comes to you? So if you're in Israeli, you go like this. In Italy, if you're in Italy, what does this mean? Everybody knows what in Italy it means? It means go yourself.
Go away.
No, worse than that. Go away there. Yeah. So he understood, Jesus understood the Italian gesture, not the Israeli gesture. He says, get lost. That's what he understood. He was trying to tell him, wait a minute, I'm in the middle of Shema, I'm finished Shema, and we'll talk. הראה לו בידו, he told him in his hand, כסבור ישו שהוא דוחהו. Yeshu thought, Jesus thought, by the way, his name was Yoshua. Throughout Jewish literature, we call him Yeshu. Yud Shin Vav, because it's an acronym, Imach Shmo V'Zichro. May his name be erased forever. We change his name on purpose, it's always Yeshu. Just what you know. Halach v'zakaf levana. So what is Yeshu did? He went out, put up a brick, and bowed down to it. Idol worship. He says, this is my idol from now on. Not only he did it to himself, he made other people do it. Yeah? That's what Yeshu did. Rabbi Yoshua ben Parachia didn't give up on him. Amar lo chazor becha. He says, do tshuva. Now he's gone home. I'll take you back. He says, do tshuva for what you did. I'll even take you back after that. Amar lo chazor becha. Amar lo, so Jesus told him back, you can't. Because I learned something that you used to teach me. What did you used to teach me? Mekubilani mimcha, I received from you, I was in a class with you, and you said, Kol hachoteh umachti et harabim, anybody who sins and make other people sins, en maspikim beyado la'asot tshuva. God doesn't let him do tshuva. ואמר מר, ישו כישף והסית והדיח את ישראל. And Mar says, and this is how the whole phenomenon of Yeshu started. Okay? Now, the interesting part, doesn't Yoshua ben Parachia know his teaching? Yoshua ben Parachia says that somebody who sinned and he makes other people sin cannot do tshuva. So why over here he's trying to bring Jesus back? Doesn't he know that it's not going to work? So obviously, Yeshu did not understand Yoshua ben Parachia in that class, whatever that class was. Or you can say he did understood him, and Yoshua ben Parachia learned a deeper way now than he learned before. Two ways. We don't have time, but let's continue the last part. I just want to do the last part. Page 19. כאילו יצויר, if you're going to imagine שיהושע בן פרחיה לא היה דוחה את אותו איש, that you remember Yeshua ben Prachia had the saying, what was the saying of Yeshua ben Prachia? Yeah? Does everybody remember what was he saying? I'll read it again from inside. דן את כל האדם לכף זכות. Always judge a person favorably. In other words, if somebody comes, who messed up in always judge a person favorably? No? Jesus did. Yeshua ben Prachia came to the conclusion, if I would have taught that lesson, that always judge a person favorably, Jesus would not kill millions of people throughout his time. Throughout Christianity, wouldn't have killed all those millions of people. If I would have made this lesson, why? Because Jesus had two ways to understand this. He chose to understand it in the negative way. He could have understood it in the positive way. I should have taught what? My main message should have been, always judge a man favorably. If that was my main message and not the message I gave in the beginning, this whole Jesus wouldn't have happened.
Wow.
Yeah? Just because of that. In other words, Yeshua ben Prachia says, I messed up in my teaching. This is why in the end of his life, that was his teaching. Always find a man, always judge a man favorably. Because it says, if my student would have learned that, all this Jewish history wouldn't have happened. By the way, this Jewish history didn't happen yet. But he knew it already. He knew, he saw. Yeah? I don't know exactly what he saw. He saw evil, he saw clouds. He was a sage. I don't know exactly what. He saw it's going to be problems. כאילו יצויר שיהושע בן פרחיה לא היה דוחה את אותו איש, if he wouldn't have pushed away that man, כאשר הוא בא ורצה להתקרב, when he wanted to come close, לא היה מתרחש כל העניין שיצא מאותו איש. Nothing would have happened. והיו נחסכים כל הצרות הנוראות שהיהודים סבלו, and all the troubles we had throughout generation wouldn't have happened. And since Yeshua ben Prachia understood this gesture the wrong way, in other words, Havi dan et kol ha'adam lechaf zchut, he wasn't judging him to, he did it, this thing, he thought it was an evil thing and not a weight thing. עלינו ללמוד מזה. So what do we learn from it? שאסור לדחות אף אחד, that we're not allowed to push away anybody. If somebody is genuinely coming back and asking, I want back, I want back, I want back, you take him back, no matter what he does. אלא צריך למצוא זכות על כל אחד. You need to find a good reason to accept every Jew. גם כזה שעומד בדרגה מיותר. Even a Jew like Jesus. Even a Jew like Jesus. ואפילו, and look at the way the Rebbe learns it. You know what Yeshua ben Prachia tells you? You know what the message is? You're in the middle of Shema next time. And a Jew, Yeshua comes back to you. You know what you do?
Stop Shema and talk.
Very good. Right now you're talking to God. You stop talking to God. And by the way, you're not allowed to stop the Shema even for a king. Even for a king. But for that, you stop Shema and you address them. This is what? Ethics of the Father. What's ethics of the Father?
Above and beyond the law.
All, that's the way you should be thinking. It doesn't have to be above and below. It's the way it should be, not halacha. We're not talking about, this is the way, this is your mindset should be. This is how a person should think. This is ethics. ואפילו כשאוחזים באמצע קריאת שמע, and even if a person is holding in the middle of שמע, כפי שהיה יהושע בן פרחיה אחז בשעתו, שאז אוחזים בייחוד העילה, in other words, it was completely connected to God, and somebody else is asking for help, physically or spiritually, you stop the שמע, and what? יכול הוא לחשוב לעצמו, he can think to himself, הרי הוא אוחז בייחוד העילה, איך יכול הוא אז לצקים בזה? How can I leave the other person by myself? How is it possible? מלמד אותנו הסיפור עם יהושע בן פרחיה, so God is telling over here, this is a God way of thinking, שזוהי לא הדרך, this is not the way. לא כיהושע בן פרחיה שדחפה בשתי ידיים, not like יהושע בן פרחיה that pushed him with both hands, אלא חייבים להתעסק מיד עם הזולת. You had immediately to stop doing what you're doing and help the person. And this is what Judaism is all about. This is the viewpoint of Judaism.